The audience is filtered so that very serious things can be discussed. In our midst is an august visitor. Alhaji Mohammed is a very grounded power player. And he has a very simple assignment. And that assignment is to review our policy in the states, our power policy, to make it more robust, to make it more palatable, to make it more investment friendly, so that when we go to DFIs and co, we will be able to talk very strongly, we'll be able to talk very clearly about what we want. Alhaji, you have a cross-section of cross-variants, the creme de la creme of the power sector. We made this gathering very small so that it can be interactive and very deep. I am sure that by the time we start this meeting, you'll agree with me that the men who are here are men who are very experienced in this sector. If what you're looking for is not enough, well, I assure you that you will start individual visitation if the case may be, as the case may be rather.
I start by taking a quotation, which I will read, on the importance of electricity or electrification to the economy. Is something, a quotation that I so much love because it says so much within some very few sentences. And it goes thus: as Africa thrives under surging economic and population growth rates, we face the challenge of ensuring that everyone benefits optimally from the gains of development. Utility are key to growth. Their provision or the lack of can make the difference between life and death, between a prosperous society with expanding opportunity and one where people struggle with poverty and vulnerability. Electricity can increase household per capita income by 39%. Increase of per capita income by 39%, you can imagine, by just having electricity. Businesses operate at higher levels of productivity. Farmers can run cleaner irrigation. Systems and processing machines, they can also run systems and processing machines that improve their yields and, of course, their income. Cross River is partly greatly agrarian. Most of our people are farmers. So assuming they have the electricity, that they can be able to process some of their products. Assuming they have the electricity, that they can be able to preserve what they produce, that can be life-changing. So what's the current Nigerian electricity market structure? Prior to the constitutional amendment, and of course the recent Electricity Act 2023 that was signed last year, we all know that states have the authority and the power to participate in the electricity business, but they don't have the power or authority to regulate it. Regulation rests with the national government, and it rests with the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. But with the constitutional amendment and the new act, states can now regulate everything about electricity within their states. The only thing they can't do is to regulate something that is cross-border. Anything that is outside their state, it is beyond their control. So to a large extent, it means under the current circumstance, they can regulate the distribution sector in their state, they can regulate the generation sector, they can even regulate transmission if it is only within their states. But as it is now, our transmission grid run across the whole of the country. So what is the state of the market, of the national electricity market? Why is it that we are so excited, we are so happy that states now have opportunity to do something? We all know the challenges we are facing. So probably there may be no need to mention that. Only yesterday, I think, or the day before yesterday, we had a grid collapse, which means the whole of the country was put into darkness, arising from the fact that we are all interconnected through this grid. And although our current generation capacity is far in excess of 12,000 megawatts, we are hardly able to generate more than 5,500 megawatts at any given time. And by the time it is distributed, you end up, through losses and all that, getting less than 4,000 megawatts at times to the last mile. Of the 12,000 megawatts available capacity, also, we have challenges of fuel, which is mainly gas. So gas supply is a challenge. And we rely heavily on gas for our generation. Assuming even gas is available and we can generate the whole of that, our transmission capacity is restricted to only some 7,000 megawatts. So where do we start? And whom do we blame? So the constitutional amendment and the new act have virtually now given state governments the opportunity also to be fully engaged in this sector. Before, it was mainly the federal government with little intervention of states. But now the states can on their own decide what to do. So earlier on I said we don't need to talk about the challenges. But probably it is important to refresh our minds about some of these challenges. Because at the end of the day, in crafting our policy, we shall be looking as to how do we resolve some of these challenges that impact on us nationally. In the distribution sector, we all know the problem we have. One of the biggest problems we have is lack of meters. If you cannot measure something, how then do you price it? How then do you charge your customers? There is a part of this state that has only 7% metering. The part that receives electricity through Katsina Ala in Benue State. The percentage of metering is only 7%. I don't have figures of the total metering in the state, but I'm sure it should be something less than 40% probably. There is also limited investment by the discos. We all know that the discos have been privatized, but it is the state government, the local government, our politicians, and our communities that are funding this discourse. They do virtually little or nothing in terms of investment. I have talked about the fact that we only have 7,000 megawatt capacity of the transmission grid. And despite that, it is so fragile. Little thing, we have a breakdown. We have a grid collapse. In this year alone, So far, within 12 months, we have witnessed 12 system collapses. Despite the abundance of gas we have in this country also, our GenCos are always complaining of gas shortages. Why should we have gas shortage in a country that is gas rich? In fact, Nigeria has more gas than oil. But yet, we cannot be able to fuel our generation companies. To cap it all, we have very poor customer service. PhD is here, so I'm sure if they can check their records, their complaints record, every day, probably, they're receiving complaints from customers. Of course, as a utility, they will also complain to you that their tariff is low or the tariff is depressed. They will also complain to you that customers are stealing energy. They will also complain to you that people are not paying for the energy, that is, even those who are metered, unless they have prepaid meters. So these are all challenges which states now, if they take over this responsibility, must try to resolve. These are issues which at the end of the day, our policy must look into. So what's the legal basis of state intervention in this sector? On what basis are we trying to come out with this framework? Because for everything you do, there has to be a legal backing to it. We all know, as I said earlier, electricity is in the concurrent legislative list in the Constitution. It means both states and the federal government can legislate or participate in it. The Electricity Act 2023 and even the precursor act, that EPSR Act, removed the monopoly that was formerly enjoyed by PSCI. So we no longer have a company that has a monopoly in that business. All our states also, all the 36 states and the FCT, they all have shares in the existing distribution companies, because when the government sold it, they only sold 60%. So 40% belongs to the federal government, the state government, and the unions in the sector. The discos also don't have any exclusivity. PHED cannot say that no one can operate in Cross River. That doesn't exist. Yes, they have Calabar, Cross River, geographically as one of their franchise states. But that doesn't mean other operators cannot come and operate within the state, as long as they are licensed by the regulator. And of course, by virtue of the Electricity Act 2023, states have been compared with regulatory powers. So, coming back home now to Cross River State. Cross River State, we all know, is among the oldest states in Nigeria. It has a land area of about 22,000 square kilometers, a population of almost 4 million, and one of the states that has the highest literacy rate of over 70%. And our state is the tourism capital of Nigeria. We are home to a generation plant that has 565 megawatts. That's the Odukpani NDPSC plant. We are also home to the Calabar prison. But despite all this, Cross River State is one of the least electrified states in Nigeria. Why should this happen? My former boss put a quotation which I would like to read. That's Dr. Ransom Owen. Let me read it in quotes. He started by saying, "It can only be comprehension why a major industrial manufacturing cluster has not crystallized around the free trade zone, seaport, international airport, north-south highway terminus, and the mega power plant, as is customary elsewhere around the world." So he's questioning, with all this infrastructure, why is it that we have not developed a major industrial manufacturing cluster? Because Calabar or Cross River has all what it takes. What is the difference really between Calabar and Lagos? There is a seaport here. There is a seaport in Lagos. There is a generation plant here. There is a generation plant in Lagos. We have gas infrastructure here. They have gas infrastructure there. We have a free trade zone. They also have a free trade zone. So why are we not competing? The Cross River State Minister of Power and Renewable Energies vision statement is to become a leading energy efficient Nigerian state with adequate, reliable, and quality power at appropriate price available to all. So I'm sure if we are able to achieve on this vision statement, then we can be able to answer the poser raised by Dr. Owen. Because electricity is key. It unlocks so many things. What are the positive impacts of having electricity? We have said some of it. There is a positive correlation between power supply and crime reduction. Cross River is very peaceful. Probably, I will say, the most peaceful state in this country. But in states where there have been security challenges, you find in every places where there is electricity, there is lesser crime, especially crimes committed during the evenings, at nights. In our cities, the moment you put street lights in criminally infested areas, the criminals disappear because no one would like to be seen committing a crime to a great extent. There is also a positive correlation between power supply and economic growth. Lagos is currently the fifth largest economy in Africa as a state. And 20% or more than 20% at times of Nigeria's power supply goes to Lagos. Without electricity, that growth will be stunted. There are so many benefits of having electricity. I tried to make comparison between what Lagos State as a state gets and what Cross River, Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, and River State are getting. Based on the 2006 population figures, Lagos has a population of 9,100,000. 113,605 people, 9 million. And as per the NERC MITRE order for November 2024, Lagos State will be receiving or received 1,116 megawatt hour per hour of electricity in November. Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Cross River and Rivers, with a population of 13.6 million based on 2006 census figures, they are getting 282 megawatt hour per hour, which is less than 30% of what Lagos is getting. And these four states have a population that is more than 40%, almost 50% higher than that of Lagos, based on 2006 figures. So you can imagine the difference now in terms of development, what the impact is. So now we have the opportunity to change the narratives. Because if it is based on certain rules, certain laws, so now as a state, we can also be able to make the laws that will enable us attract the kind of investment we want in this sector, so as to develop our own economy. So how do we go about establishing the Cross River electricity market? What are the things? One of the first things we need to do is to have this electricity policy. We have to define what really we need, how we intend to go about it. And as part of it also, we have to design our own market. We have to design the Cross River electricity market. We also must have a legal framework that will support the implementation of this policy. That's an electricity law for the state. We also need a Cross River State integrated resource plan that will be able to identify what we have currently in terms of infrastructure, the demand currently, and the projected demand, and how we intend to meet this demand. We must also put in place a competitive and transparent procurement process for generation. And there has to be a bankable commercial framework. Because unless we are saying it is only government that will be involved in this, if we want to attract investors, then there has to be a bankable commercial framework. It is only on that basis that people can invest. And we must ensure that we have capable market participants. Who are those market participants also? Of course, we are talking of those who will be players in this market. We are talking of the distribution entities, the transmission entities, the generation companies, and a host of others that will make the market. And we also must come out with a transition path. So, unlocking new opportunities. But before then, maybe let me talk about the transition path. By law, we are expected, as a state, by the time we pass our law, to notify the national regulator. And within 45 days or so, after giving this notification to NERC, they are expected to give us the authority. And within some days, also, we are expected to notify PHED so that they unbundle themselves and create a subsidiary company that will operate only within Cross River, and that will be licensed by our new regulatory institution. And 6 months after we have made that submission, the national regulator is supposed to give the state regulator the authority to take over regulation within the state. So what are the opportunities that will come out from this decision? In terms of, when I said unlocking opportunities, I'm mainly talking about investment opportunities, benefits that will come out. I'm not only talking about the fact that we will end up with having a stable and sustainable supply of electricity. One, it means now we can be able to license our own IPPs, independent power producers. We set our own licensing terms and conditions. If people have been driven away because they feel the terms and conditions are too harsh, we can decide to set up standards that we feel will still be sustainable and will still attract the best of people. We have the opportunities to license mini and micro grids. This can be solar, hydro, or wind. Cross River has abundant water resources. I'm not sure if we have any hydro dam. And there are opportunities for that. We can have both micro hydros, mini hydros, or even large hydros. I know recently the federal government, through the World Bank, has secured a funding which it is extending to river basin development authorities for the development of hydroelectric dams. I don't know if Cross River is part of it, and I hope I will be able to meet with the Cross River Basin Development Authority to find about that also. We can also set up independent electricity distribution networks that can compete with the subsidiary company that will be set up by PHED here. So PHED will no longer be a monopoly. Other independent distributors can come in. We can register electricity traders who may not own wires, but they can buy electricity from anywhere, transmit it through the transmission company of Nigeria Corridor, and use any of the distribution companies around, either the subco of PHED or any other IDN that is registered. So that gives also people the opportunity of having a choice. It means there will be retail competition in the electricity industry. It is something that is possible, that is feasible. If we want it as part of our policy, so be it, we also have it. We can also have electricity cooperatives. We encourage the people in our rural areas to come together as cooperatives to support themselves in developing electricity infrastructure, in settling their bills. There are so many models of how that can be done. We can also introduce net metering, especially for people that are generating electricity on their own, especially renewable energy generators. Which means if you have at home your solar panels and you are generating your own electricity, at the time you are not at home, or if you are generating excess, you sell it to the distribution company. At the end of the day, you net off. So if you consume 100 kilowatts and you sold to them 50 kilowatts, that means they charge you for only 50 kilowatts, so you save money. Or we even have a gross metering initiative. So under the gross metering, in your own home or in your own factory, you have your own solar or whatever. You just sell everything to them. Because one thing we realize is that there is abundance of self-generation. And most of this self-generation is only being used by the generators when they can be able to benefit commercially by selling it out. If we have such as a policy, that will encourage or incentivize people to invest in that sector. I'm sure Madam Doctor will be so happy because it will, in fact, on her own organization, everyone goes solar and we're electrifying everywhere. So we also have the opportunity of licensing meter asset providers and manufacturers. So it will no longer be the responsibility of NAC. So it is a business opportunity for man here. You set off meter assembly plants or meter manufacturing plants that will meet the requirement of the citizens. So if you are talking of appropriate pricing based on certain circumstances, then are we also considering a subsidy in our policy, or do we want to pursue full recovery of cost? The law is very clear on subsidy, but it doesn't mean we cannot improve on that. Already there is a provision for Power Consumer Assistance Fund that is supposed to support the very low class citizens that are at the bottom that may not afford it. It is something which the federal government is supposed to set off, which is supposed to serve all those in need. But as a state, are we interested or are we considering the possibility of doing something outside that? Because the federal government scheme is yet to take off, despite the fact that it has been there since 2005 when the EPSR was enacted. It has never taken off. And of course it has its own implications, because the funding for the Power Consumer Assistance Fund is supposed to come from the government and from maybe manufacturers, or those I call the Band A customers. So that means adding additional burden on them. And of course, the next thing is our consideration for the climate, greenhouse gases emission. By the law, Cross River State wants to have net zero by 2048. or 2050 now. I thought it was 2048 from the law. But the federal government is talking about, I think, 2060. So Cross River State wants to beat the national target. But then there are repercussions also for it, which in our policy we also have to consider. Yes, as a policy, the federal government has said gas will be a transition fuel. And the cheapest or the easiest way of generating electricity in Nigeria now, because of the abundance of gas, is to have gas-based plant. So what happens if Cross River has this, and most of the investors willing to come here want to invest in thermal plants that will use gas? Will this not be an incentive to them, so that by 2048, I may be paying charges for the use of gas? Because even gas emits. So, and 2048 is, or 2050 is, how many years from now? 20-something years. So, you set off a plant, you have to recover your cost and all that. So, these are also consideration. Will there be exemptions or extension for people setting up such plants? What are the plans? Because if we maintain this, it will be in conflict with our desire to attract investment. So my last slide is a quotation from Yemi Kale. Yemi, I think, was the DG of the Bureau of Statistics. And part of this is one of the reasons why I said we must have this conversation. And let me read what Yemikale said. Public policy formulation and execution are central to any country's process of development. They are the processes by which a government translates their political, economic, and social goals for their people into programs, projects, and plans, so as to deliver their set objectives. Accordingly, for a policy to be effective, it must be based on facts, presented by data, which set standards and benchmarks for evaluation, which in turn nurtures policies. The opposite for that is shooting in the dark. We don't want to shoot in the dark. We want to shoot when the sun is at its brightest, when we can see our target. That's why we must have this kind of conversation, so that we can hear from all of you as stakeholders. Thank you for your attention.
I just have a few contributions towards coming up with a very robust electricity policy. I know we've talked about generation, we've talked about distribution. He has made that, he has given a good narrative of that in his presentation, but I want us to also capture efficient utilization, because it's not just to generate enough renewable and resourceful energy, but how it is being utilized is key. We're getting into an era that we have to refine our infrastructure so that we can, it goes in different sector, in the building sector, in transportation, even individually, how we generate, how we use our electricity at home. So utilization is really key, so that we can have a sustainable electricity in Cross River State. Then I also want to react to what you said about if we can produce in excess so we can export to neighboring states and even a neighboring country like Cameroon. Now then we'll have the issue of regulation. So how do we expect to have a fair hearing where the national government is concerned? in this interplay between states and national. So maybe we are giving some electricity, because currently I came from the forestry sector. A lot of our wood is being used in neighboring states, and we've not been able to arrive at a solution to that marriage between us selling our wood or utilizing it in other states. Finally, I want to talk about, you mentioned the conflict with gas when it comes to Cross River State achieving carbon neutrality, and actually you were correct in 2048. So we're debating between 2050 and 2048, but on the law is 2048, so you're correct. There won't be conflict, because it's not just transition away from fossil fuel, it's a just and equitable transition. So the transition shouldn't make people lose jobs, shouldn't make people be scared of bringing in investment. In fact, on that gas aspect, I would like my colleague to speak more on it, just briefly.
Thank you very much, DG. We are saying that in as much as we support desire to achieve net zero in 2048, it must not be done to the detriment of our own development. So we shouldn't see our gas potential as such an enemy to climate and such an enemy to Mother Earth. Because even as we speak today, the President-elect of the United States has said U.S. will go back to fracking. Fracking is far worse than gas. And then they are ready to go there. Because at the end of the day, you must feed your people with energy. Energy crisis is worse. So I feel that in our own policy, we should have a caveat for our gas utilization for energy generation, because we need it. We need power, we need to transport power, and then we will now go to our distributed generation, which is what we advocate, especially because of the geography of our state. You know, we are actually longitudinal, we are just on the road. Transporting power is very expensive, which is transmission. Malga, the essay, is an expert in it. So transmission is expensive. Distributed generation will serve us better. And gas will be that easy way out of our distributed generation. So while we are crafting this policy, a special caveat should be made for gas. Now, the reason is because when we say greenhouse emissions, yes, there are emissions considered greenhouse from gas. Yes, so that we don't lump it together. So we should have a caveat for that, so that people feel protected if they intend to invest in this area, and then they know, I was discussing with the consultant, that any form of investment into gas is expensive, it's capital intensive, and it will take a while for you to recover your pay. So when you are now talking of that kind of investment and now seeing that by 2048 government will come after you, you are scared to invest even more. So a caveat should be there so that people can hold that document to their chest. Thank you.
I think that Cross River can actually set an agenda in renewable energy for the rest of the states in Nigeria. We're looking at encouraging more investments for the development of our power sector in the renewable energy rather than in gas. I know we have gas deposits, yes. But if we already set a target for ourselves, and the world already has its own target, and we're committed to some of these policies at the national and international levels, rather than push or try to protect would-be investors in the gas sector, would we not rather encourage those who would rather push in the renewable energy investments? For instance, Madam knows that Oando is doing a marvelous job in wind energy proposition. Almost 20 or 30 towers of investments proposed for Cross River for wind energy. We know some of investments in medium and small hydro already coming in. She spoke to UNIDO recently. They are pushing for solar, and it's coming in big. And we have some other persons who are proposing this. If Cross River can have, okay, we already have a gas plant at Odupani. If we can let that be the only one for now, and then push for renewable energy and score 80% even by that 2048, I think we're doing good. Rather than push backward by investing more in gas across the state and then try to meet a new timeline in 2000 or something. Thank you very much.
I want to say that power has been a very key and very critical issue in manufacturing. Of course, I will use my own company as an example. We have a rubber processing plant in Biakpan, and most of you who know the state, Biakpan borders Ohafia in Abia State, and you need to cross the Cross River to go to the other side of Biakpan. I'm operating solely 100% on diesel. I'm operating 100% on diesel. We are actually not connected to the national grid. There is no gas pipeline that is closer there. So with the high cost of diesel, you can only imagine what my production cost looks like. In terms of business clusters in the state, I think we actually have not equally gotten it right. It looks like people on that other side of Cross River are totally abandoned. I'm saying this with all honesty. And if nothing is done, the investors that would have dared to go and put their investment there, if not for the resilience of the investors, we would have been running out of the place. And you know what will happen to the community, a border community for that matter, if they don't have anything to eat, and the slightest provocation is war. So this is a very good initiative. This is a very good policy. I want to thank the government for all of this. So the private sector, they are the people suffering the brunt of high cost of energy. So with what is going on here, I think it will bring a lot of relief if we handle it the way it should be, especially in terms of implementation. So I want to thank the ministry, initiating this. I want to thank the consultant. I think in the next couple of hours, if there are things we actually need to add, we will be able to reach out to the consultant and look at the document and do the additions we need to do. But let me thank everyone for this, and I am believing that in no distant time, if this thing comes up and the implementation is swift, more investors will come into the state, and particularly, we are looking forward to ensuring that businesses in the state do not close shops. Businesses in the state do not close shops. So as much as we can, we should fast track this, let it come up, let the implementation be very robust so that the benefits will be seen very clearly. Thank you very much.
What led to the use of gas today during the Obasanjo regime was that we had power problem. What is the fastest means of getting power? And what was the fastest means of getting power? Okay, the background first and foremost. The money that was used came from money from excess crude, which usually is shared among the federal government, the states, and local government. Then they decided, no, this time let us not share. So what do we do with it? People said roads, some education, some health. Then somebody mentioned power. Great. So power, which is the fastest means of getting power? Because hydro takes a long time. The wind, for instance, we did a study at Cattle Ranch, and we didn't have enough wind at the ranch. Yes, records are there. It should be with the sea. A study was done during the Nadius time. We didn't have enough wind at the ranch. So which is the fastest means? Gas. And it happened that all the coastal areas all have gas. That it was cheaper to have the power stations at the source of the gas and wheel the power on towers and lines and what have you. So that's what led to the use of gas. So, madam, don't be afraid. So those of us who are down here, we continue using gas to power here. Then those of us who are up there, we use solar and other means of power to power our area. So that's the background about the issue of gas, because it was the fastest means. And we were told then that we shall get power within 6 months. Within 6 months. Okay? It's very, very cheap method. So that's what was applied. So, for instance, now somebody was trying to lay gas pipeline. That money they spent laying gas pipeline to wherever was enough to power the whole country. Carrying the power from gas location on the lines to various parts of the country. So, but as time goes on, I will say more things on other areas. But that's the background about the use of gas. Thank you.
Talking about the policy document is a good development, but my worries is that, just like he said, the timing. You know, I'm thinking that as a business membership organizations that have a lot of members, you know, I think we should have been given a little time to maybe study the document, then make our respective inputs, and now get back to the government. I don't know whether it's out of place to go by that. Then secondly, talking about the power in the states, you know, manufacturers depend so much on power. You know, so businesses cannot run without power. And most times when we go for factory visits, factory inspections, what we keep hearing is that the power comes, especially not during production hours. Maybe most times in the night, or most times when they're about closing and all of that. So now that we are having a roadmap for a new power policy, the state concerned. So please, I think the distribution companies and all that should be made on the know. Just that it's unfortunate that the industrial cluster that we have here in Cross River is not really effective. So now that we have a new government, let there be a industrial cluster and maybe a dedicated line to that area, so that we know that this during production hours, they have at least minimum of 8 to 10 hours steadily. It will cut down production costs, because it's not doing the manufacturers a ton of investment when they have almost 80% or so of their production costs going to power. It's not helping, seriously. So please, this is a serious matter that would need to be taken up. Then also commend the consultant. You did a very good detailed job.
Just traveling from Calabar to the north, you just know that there's no power in Cross River State. And sometimes you just wonder, how did we get here? Because the infrastructures were there, we no longer have them. I know that Mr. P.K. Bello did something very big in Ogaga and Bekwara, Okuku, all those places. I know he did them. But I don't know at what point that we allowed all of these things just go down. If you're traveling along the road, you will just see our lines on the floor, poles have fallen, no lights in communities. And then people are calling me every day. I don't have light, I don't have transformer, I don't have light, I don't have transformer. And I'm like, I wish I have the powers of Jesus Christ to just say, let there be light. I of God, let there be light. Because it is a daunting task to put Cross River State back to where it used to be. I think we just allowed the vandals take full, responsibility over our infrastructure. It is bad. It is terribly bad. That's on one side. But by the grace of God, we have the intentions, we have the energy, we have the vigor, we have the strength, we have the vitality, we have the know-how to see how we can put this back. But the fundamental problem again is funding. All of this thing is tied to funding.
When Donadu came to office, he wanted to electrify the states. Then what the states were doing, the rural electrification. And I was privileged to be in his kitchen cabinet. And I told him the only way you can get this done is to make sure that every community where the line passes, must have lights. And that's the way we can ensure that those lines are secured and safe. let's take, for instance, when the late Uno, I don't know how many of you knew about Professor Uno. He was okay. When he was in office as the vice chairman, no, not chancellor, vice chairman of the state under Ernest Atta as governor. He now became the vice chairman, like a deputy governor, military governor, deputy governor equivalent. Yes. So they now used because of his office to take light to Agua Agune, where he comes from Ugep, through the prisons, through Adim. Of course, that line didn't survive. It didn't survive. So when Donald came, I told him, look, this had happened in the past. If we don't do this, we cannot achieve this. And this is on record that Donald Duke's regime achieved much in the rural education program because he listened, and that was done, and everybody was able to watch over the lines. When lines are been constructed and left to stand fallow for a long time, it's as though, oh, it's not useful anymore. Go ahead. And sorry, another thing we did also during the NIPP project, like I said here now, the money came from SS Crude. So everybody's involved, federal government, state government, local government. So whatever is in your location is your own share. So watch over it. It's your own share. No matter how long it takes, watch over it, it's your own share. But unfortunately, he just told me here, it's a very sad story, that most of the lands have been vandalized. Completely. Even the one at Ukuku, which are constructed, vandalized. Ugep was even vandalized before it was handed over. Ugep was vandalized before it was handed over. Despite the preaching, I go to the chiefs, I go to schools, I go to community, I go to everywhere. Please, these are your projects. This money is your own money. Take care of it.
This whole band A, band B, band C, band D, band E is yielding some form of result. Yes, for band A, like you mentioned yesterday, we know that people are being cheated because you're supposed to give these people power between 20 and whatever. People don't get it because of the metering system. People are still being cheated. PhD, you're here. So, please, in our policy, let us think for the future and for our children. Some of us, I was telling him something yesterday. I said, whatever we want to do, we need to create a complete demarcation between politicians and the businessmen and companies, professionals. Reasons being that I am a politician. My honorable commissioner is a politician. My brother is a politician. What brought us to this position that we're handling today is because we are politicians. And we could go to the field, deliver. What we call deliver, eh? I'm just being very practical so that we don't come and just do things and go. We deliver. When we deliver our polling units, deliver our local government and our wards, and for you to deliver, that means you have followers that are depending on you. Is that so? As a politician, when I am the one collecting that revenue, my brother, we will find a way to settle our followers for the next elections, and things will not be done. I don't know if I'm making sense at all. That is the truth. Let's see, I don't know if I'm but I'm telling you the truth. We can also agree that the reasons why things are the way they are, you cannot separate the politicians from these things because of this long retinue of responsibility.
It is the things that we have to agree as stakeholders now that, okay, which one should come and which one should play in the new ground that we're opening. Of course, the law, this electricity bill as proposed, we will take a look at it and then send it to the assembly, and if that is passed, it will form the regulatory, of course, framework for be able to deliver on all of this. These are just a little background to some of the work we were able to do, but we hope that in sitting with you and the other team members, we should be able to see what is right, what is not acceptable, and of course, like you said, pricing, whether the government will pay subsidy for pricing or will just unbundle it and leave it on top of the consumers. Thank you very much.
I was directly involved in nominating Umonai land because they were very, very far off grid, and we don't know when grid can get there. And it was supposed to be a model which would have been upscale to other communities. We did a lot of work on, the Umon Island project was just one amongst 5 states. Other states have succeeded. Their projects are being upscaled apart from Umon that collapsed. Because the business model we used then was the private sector is involved, the donor agency is involved, the state government is involved. But for Umon, there was no private sector engagement. So the project was done, handed over to an NGO. The NGO had no stake. They just reap where they did not sow. When you go to Ogun State, Sokoto, Plateau, Niger State, where it was a PPP arrangement, those projects are working very well. And with decentralized energy is what we advocated for Cross River State. All these the collapsed grids along. We did a study and we found out that there are potentials for a lot of communities to have power through renewables. For example, small hydro. We have capacity to generate about 45 megawatts, small hydro, decentralized locations. We did maps on all that, identify all those locations. You don't need to connect to the grid. You just get your power, use it within that vicinity, working on a PPP model. We did all that. We developed policies. Those policies are there. They're supposed to be, some are supposed to be with sea, but unfortunately, it's like they were vandalized and destroyed. So the decentralized energy in Cross River State should be given priority. Because if you want to connect the whole state using grid, you're already seen that it's almost not possible because of the cost. So let's look at that. Thank you.
We are here talking about the robust system or policy toward electrifying Cross River State. And we really know what our society is. I'm here to raise, a question and also to express a kind of fear, because I know where I'm coming from. Mind you, I say I'm in charge of the medium and the small enterprise in Cross River State. One question is, if you check very well, particularly the kind of area where we may not have big men there, you will discover that if there is any form of destruction in the power line, say transformer or so, we will discover that that area will be let fallow for a very long time, whereby it's either the community decide to contribute to either buy a new transformer. We are also aware that our community, our society today is dominated with inequality, social stratification. We are also aware that most of the time there are some areas that you see light. We are talking about robust policy. Whether this robust policy is targeted particular group of people or is for the generality of the society, so that it will make robust. So now our fear is that how will we be able to bring out such policy, such a way that where the kind of power that says our people, housing people are benefiting, the Atimbo area too will equally benefit, so as to encourage the small and medium enterprise people to enjoy too, in order for us to grow and let the state develop. So I think that's the few questions I have in mind, and also the fear that I choose to raise. And thirdly, I think one of the reasons why we hear about visualization, exception of the Kwara experience, is the fact that many areas, many of this electrical infrastructure are left fallow, maybe due to one small issue in that area. The company will abandon that area and left it for the vendors. The vendor, because many of these areas, if there is light there, people will not attempt to touch it. But if the area is left without light for a very long time, I'm not guaranteeing any form of visualization. But if the area is without light for a very long time, it gives opportunity to those hoodlums to start touching it. Now, another question from this angle is that where are these stolen materials from the electrical infrastructure? Where are they taken to? Somehow I was made to understand that these materials are taken back into the company to resurface again, maybe selling it to the community and collecting extra money outside the money that maybe government made to provide. So please, while we are trying to make a robust policy, you should check all of that so that you consider those small areas.
By the time the policy is reviewed, also, part of the work plan is that we'll have another engagement. We'll come, put it here, then let's see if we have captured most of what you have said now and what you'll also say in the future, maybe through this direct contact. So it is not that this is the end of it. No, this is the beginning. But the next thing is for us to draft it, do the review, and then after the review, we come and sit again and say, okay, have we captured really what you want us to do? So quite a number of things have been said. The first thing I think DG talked about efficient utilization. I think we must have as a policy, something in the policy that has to do with demand side management. Demand side management. We have to be efficient. We have to know, or we have to encourage the management of the resource that we have. We shouldn't allow people to just be wasting these resources. More so, we are talking about climate change and all that. So by whatever means, we have to do that. And that shouldn't end with electricity only, but it also has to do with maybe your buildings, your whatever. So many things. So that should be part of the policy. We should have a demand-side management policy. Then on the issue of export, someone made mention of export. How do we handle that? In quite a number of things we are going to propose, we must have a handshake still with the national regulator. Of course, we cannot export. Assuming we have so much of it, we cannot export to another country. To even export to another state, it becomes interstate. We can't regulate that. But what is important is for us to have the abundance of electricity in such a way that we can be able to even sell to others. So if you want to export to another country or to another state, we have to do it using the national regulator. So there is something which Doctor you mentioned about the fact that, was it Doctor or the other, Mr. Okay, Mr. Etim, on the fact that Owando and quite a number of others are working on setting of wind farms and all that. But Elder has mentioned the fact that they have done quite a number of studies. And in some of these studies, we don't have enough wind to run some of these things. I think we have to be very careful in some of these things. The federal government did a wind farm somewhere, I think in Kazina. I think it started at the time of Eradua. It's there almost, I will say, a useless investment. Billions have been sunk for nothing. So I hope in doing that, you make sure that they do an in-depth study. And it will help if you can be able to find out what Elder has done, what they have done in their time, so that they just don't come and waste their resources also. Because at the end of the day, if the yield is too low, they have to recover their money. So that means the tariff will also is going to be very expensive, and it will be unaffordable. So another thing, on the issue of the security of our infrastructure, protection of our infrastructure. No, this is tragic. It happens virtually everywhere. Everywhere. And I think maybe as part of this policy, we have to provide some deterrent. Deterrent in two ways. One, just like I mentioned, as the regulatory institution can register or license electricity cooperatives for communities. So such cooperatives can also help in providing security for the assets. But another means also is to ensure that there are repercussions for those who vandalize these assets. They shouldn't just be allowed to go scot-free. There should be repercussions. And it shouldn't be only those who vandalized, but the people who buy this vandalized equipment from them. Because if they don't have the incentives, if they don't have a market, they won't do it. If you know you just take something, no one will buy. What will you do with it? Unless you are crazy. Because I mean, I saw someone some times ago, I think it was on either TikTok or somewhere, of all places, he decided to jump into a police station, wall of a police station, where they have a community transformer, and vandalize the transformer in broad daylight. By the time they got hold of him, they were asking him questions. I realized that the guy was just on drugs, because only a drug addict can do that. You know that inside the police station, vandalizing the transformer in broad daylight, no fear, no nothing. So it's like saying, okay, I'm here, come and arrest me. I'm a criminal. So we must have means of protecting our infrastructure. So there was also an issue of breaking the distribution company. We don't need to break the distribution company. Assuming now we have the subsidiary company here of PHED. The regulator, the state regulator, has the right and the authority to register other distribution companies, as many as it thinks practicable or possible. And another thing is that even without the license of a new distribution company, we can register electricity traders. They don't need to own the lines. But the distribution company, existing distribution company, under the law, there is open access. They cannot deny any other person who wants to use their network, as long as there is capacity for it. The only thing is you pay for it. You pay for distribution use of system. So the regulator will enforce that. So yeah, so no one can stop that. So if they cannot be able to rehabilitate it, they cannot be able to do that, well and good. Someone can come in, sit with them, agree, do the rehabilitation, and pass his energy through that. So there are various options available which can work. And I think one thing we should also have, maybe something akin to the provision of the electrification law, is maybe we should also have a power council in the state, as someone proposed also. That should involve the state's stakeholders and, of course, some people from the executive, maybe including the local government chairman and all that. That should ensure things work. We shouldn't only have the regulator, but the regulator, of course, it should be peopled by professionals, as mentioned, not politicians. Thank you so much.
Let me start by being very appreciative of the presentation of the power policy consultant, and also thank all the participants for today's engagement. Very important. As a way of summary, let me say the Electricity Act Amendment 2023 has profiled both the states and independent power investor enormous opportunity to utilize. It's very explicit. If you look at the guidelines, section 230, it says the state is empowered to do licensing, all the compliance rules, and that will offer the investors opportunity to be safe in investing their money. So it's very clear. I just paraphrase that section. Majorly, in power policy, which I'm very sure the consultant too has captured those areas very clearly. Power policy would define, number one, the purpose of the policy. Introduction to the purpose of the policy. What is the essence of the power policy? Then number two, the scope of power policy. It's not going to be open-ended. There must be a scope that the state needs to abide with. Then there will be policy objective. Now the area I want us to be very interested in as an investors, because I'm not just speaking as a representative of the state government. I'm equally speaking in the capacity of a man who has interest in power, in investment in power. Of course, that has been our area of interest for more than 19 years. So I would even prefer to leave the office of the rep of Cross River State Government to become an independent investor in power sector, because Section 230 has given Nigerians ample opportunity to make so much money. There is so much there. Now the area I want the critical stakeholders, and I think we've not really captured that area. You have major role to play in this power policy. To me, I was expecting the MAN and then the Chamber of Commerce to ask for a draft. That draft to help you modify what is your interest, because the critical stakeholder in power sectors are largely responsible for tariff regulation. If a company comes to you and says you will pay this, if you cannot pay, you utilize the company's facility. So you are supposed to be involved in the regulation of this tariff. Not just that, you should ask, how do I get involved? Licensing and permits. These are critical areas I would like intended investor in power sector to be interested in. How do I get license? What are the requirements for the permit if I'll get involved in the business? So, see, to me, the acts, the Electricity Act 2023 has given us every Nigerian opportunity to make money from electricity. For instance, look at how the financial institution liberalized the way money is being circulated. For instance, those days we used to queue so much in the bank to withdraw money. They woke up one day and came up with a policy, and we liberated. We have plenty of POS all over, and I think that too will happen in the electricity in power sector. We cannot have, well, if you have been licensed, you cannot start distributing what you call trading of electricity. Companies have their areas where you trade with electricity and make more money. So I expect that the The critical stakeholders should be very interested in how tariffs are regulated, in how the market structure of competitions are well structured, and also how will you be protected, like my friend said. If you invest, how will you be protected? So our policies fundamentally should capture those areas of how the investors will be protected, how the consumers will be protected and all that. Then, as a state too, we'll be very interested in how do we enforce this. There should be a form of enforcement and then compliance. So the state will capture that. So as a way of summary, sir, I want to say very clearly that the market is open, well open for everybody, not just businessmen. Even the civil servant can get involved, you know, bring out group like a cooperative and start buying the electricity and market. Now let me equally add this before I sit down. You see, PHED, to me, if you ask me, they don't have plenty of problem. The problem I think the problem is the electricity consumers. We don't study rules and regulations. We don't study guidelines. For instance, a man, yesterday I was discussing with DJ and a consultant. If you go to the area like Akaifa, they come there, they call it Ban A. And I get very insulted when you are talking to energy expert. You call a particular ban A. 2 weeks back, in my capacity as a rep of the state government, I've written to the MD of PHEDC, all the vandalized substation, all the defective electrical equipment or component in the states would need to get speedy attention. If you are in a state where you are generating well over 4 billion in a month, and you cannot invest 100 million to upgrade or maintain an equipment, to me it's an absurd. To me, it's a very big slap to us as a state. So we've woken up to that. I'm sure in a few weeks you are going to hear from us too in that area, particularly in the area of intervention. So we'll take up that. So please, investors, I'm sure you are ready. All of you here are supposed to be investment ready rather. Let us get ready that the policy that is coming will help us as individual, will help us as a state liberalize some of these things that PHEDC has made very cumbersome for us. There will be electricity for all, because I feel as the state we have the capacity. But I just forgot something. Let me say this before I sit down. In 2016, prior to that time, His Excellency Liam Moke made Cross River State in his design to be electricity hub. If you look at how the Pioneer Power Plant was designed, that was primarily to take care of Cross River South. There shouldn't be any local government in Cross River South without at least 20 hours supply of electricity. So, sir, you have a tax. The tax is to ensure that all the policies we equally majorly promote investors from our state who will be able to make small money from there. Our interest is money. Secondly, service.
The federal government has a state. You can make a law for yourself, make a policy for yourself on how you generate electricity, you distribute, you transmit, distribute, and you can market and collect for yourself. If you like, run electricity for your people and as a social responsibility without collecting money, that is your own. That's what the law has said. And so it is our business that we should have our own policy. And the policy framework will not become an abstract. Definitely it has to go according to how it is, how it was. But then we are looking also at the shortfalls of what we have ever used. And so today we want to now correct those things and have a policy that will help us run a free electricity market. Today we are talking about writing our policy. The law will be there. I thank all of you who have come to contribute, so that at the end of the day, nobody will accuse each other. Oh, DG just sat there and do this, and oh, commissioner was there, just done it. The consultant has said it all, that he has come to say, let us participate. And I'm sure in next 1 week, we'll be able to have what will help us look at, and we will agree that we'll be able to have a policy, a law that will remove all the difficulties, or whether they are man-made, stations that our PhD are using to whether they are generating or to collect energy to distribute, because they are not generating, but we will want to generate. And I thank all of you who have made contributions in the direction that are we going to go renewable alone? Are we still going to be using our traditional way of generating electricity? But then, where are we? We are writing a policy, we are writing a law. It must be flexible for everybody to operate. It must be flexible. We are talking about AC. AC is already at 80 to 90% efficiency. But that Nigeria is almost like a failed nation. We don't have this thing where they are in the world. And so when a new thing comes, we want to take it to equate with what is already at 100%. The renewable are just within 20 to highest places. They are not even 30% efficiency. It's still like a test run. It's still like it's just living in a laboratory. And so if we start say, oh, we'll totally carry ourselves and put there, meanwhile we know the one that if we put effort, is already standing at 80%. We shouldn't go one way, but we should give room. Law will always give room for every individual to exist. So I thank you, people.